Hi, everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek. And yes, I'm back again already this week with another Star Trek book talk because we have finished Laurell K Hamilton's lovely novel, Nightshade, which is number 24 in the TNG numbered series. So, just finished this up today. I started it about 3 days ago. Could have finished it last night, but I decided to put it off, give it its full time. So that's what I did. Let's go ahead and read the back together here. After 200 years of civil war, the planet Oriana is dying. Most of the surface vegetation is gone. The air is nearly unbreathable, and the people themselves are dying. Now, the two warring factions have finally sat down to talk peace, and Captain Picard and the USS Enterprise are sent to help them negotiate a settlement. Picard, Lieutenant Worf, and Counselor Troi beam down to the Oriana, just as Starship Enterprise is called away on another urgent mission. Alone on the planet, the USS Enterprise team learns that there are people that would rather finish the devastating conflict than talk peace. Suddenly, Picard is accused of murder, and the delicate negotiations have fallen into the hands of Lieutenant Worf. Now, Worf and Troi must unravel the truth and prevent planet-wide disaster before time runs out for the people of Oriana and the crew of the Starship Enterprise. Bum bum bum. Yeah, that's a fairly good summary. It does spoil a little bit, so I would have been, the whole arrest of Picard in the book really did come as a shock. So I'm glad that I didn't read that because that was pretty cool. But let's first talk about the book without getting too crazy into spoilers. Basically, what you've got here is a nice, tight little Worf and Troi kind of Star Trek mystery novel. And it really sticks closely with Worf and Troi. A little bit of Picard in there, and some of the new characters as well. But what makes this work so well, or made it work so well for me, was that they just really did stick with the story, kind of stick with them, pushing through this mystery, and just barely deviated off of that. And when they did, it didn't really take away, but kind of added to it. So, features a lot of Worf doing un-Worf-like things, so more of his investigation, and less of his battle tactics and that kind of stuff, really interesting stuff goes on with Troi in this one as well. Turns out this planet has a little bit more to do on the empathy than originally thought. So her abilities are put to the test here as well. And they conveniently remove the Enterprise for most of the story, which really, tightens it up and just makes it nice that they don't have to kind of keep jumping back every other chapter to see what's going on the ship. So there is a very small B story that kind of ties back into the main story, but overall, it really just stays with Worf and Troi and follows their adventures. So, if you're looking for a fun little, it's not a huge mystery story, but it's a fun little kind of adventure mystery. And if you're a big fan of Worf or Troi, then Nightshade definitely is something good to read. I don't know much more about this author here, but I did hear that she was a New York Times bestseller, and I believe that this is, this is her only Trek book that she did put out. Man, Wikipedia's right. But I thought that she did a great job, and it looks like that she's also wrote a series of vampire hunter novels that must be fairly popular. So let's get into Laurell K Hamilton's Nightshade here. So, as the back cover said there, the book begins with Picard and the Enterprise being called in to do their normal diplomatic duty. So this planet Oriana has been in civil war for a period of at least 200 years, they say. So constant war. And General Basha, who is the leader of one faction, has requested Picard come and sit over these peace, be the ambassador to sit over these peace talks between these two nations. They have fought war for so much and so long that the planet is dead, and the planet is basically killing them as well. The air is poison, the water is poison, the ground is poison. They've killed their world with this war. They realize if they don't stop, there's going to be nothing left of their people. Hence, here comes the Enterprise. So General Basha, who is the leader of this group, he survived a recent assassination attempt, which is a pretty fairly common thing to happen here on Oriana. So they do beam down. Picard, Worf, and Troi are the away team. They go down and they meet with Basha's wife, who is Colonel Tulane. And also, everybody on this planet does wear a kind of like a kind of mask over their face, basically at all times. And that's because even though they spend all their time inside, because like everything outside is completely and totally poisoned, they're afraid that a bomb is going to blow up the wall. So they always wear their masks, even inside, just in case. So a very, very strange society. Faces basically always covered. The other thing about this society is they're very, of course, very cautious. They've been at war for 200 years. The bodyguards. So everyone, of course, has their own bodyguards. They're called like these sentinels. And if one guy has 6 bodyguards in the room, the other guy's got to have 6 bodyguards in the room. So sometimes it can get kind of crowded in there. But like I said, they've been at war for 200 years, so this is all they know. This is their life there. So they get there. They decide, the peace talk's like a couple days away. They get settled into their room. The Enterprise gets called away. They have a vessel about to implode, and they are the closest vessel there, so they got to check it out. So they're gone, and it's like I said, that's just so convenient when they can remove the Enterprise, remove that kind of crutch, and now they're just there with their wits on the surface to deal and to solve this problem they have. That night, Troi is awakened by a very powerful sense of sorrow, and it's like so strong that it's basically pushed onto her. Excuse me. Pushed onto her, wakes her up, and she has to track it down. Otherwise, it's going to push into her, take her over, basically. And this is the first kind of glimpse of the very powerful but kind of unknown to them abilities of these people, that they can project these very powerful emotions, and of course she's going to be taking the brunt of it here. So what she finds is basically the hospital, and the book gets very dark here at this point too, because excuse me, this is a hospital where they keep their children. So on this planet, since they have poisoned it and ruined it so much, no children are born without a problem, a deformity. Hardly any are even born at all. There's miscarriages and just a general struggle to even get pregnant on this world at this point. So Troy's sentinel, who's this guy Breck, leads her and Worf and the captain there to this well, they don't know what it is at first. Basically a very large room filled with all of these boxes with kind of like these tubes coming out. And at the other end, they meet up with this doctor, Dr. Zur. And it turns out that what happens is basically every baby that's born on this planet, they have to kind of rebuild in these boxes for years to kind of put them back together, since they're all born with such deformities. And what Counselor Troi was sensing was the sorrow of the mother who was giving birth, and then also the grief and sorrow of the doctor, all getting projected onto her. So, they are appalled, of course, and of course, the doctor there, Dr. Zur, is pretty much all but given up hope. And through talking with Counselor Troi, she kind of gets a little bit of that hope back, thinking that, maybe there's something that these people from the Enterprise can actually do for their society and for their children. So, yow, that stinks. Okay. This planet is going so bad, you think that they would want to change, but most of the people here are just so ingrained in their ways, it's hard. So they go to the peace conference, and it seems to be going well at first. Everybody's getting along. The other excuse me, the other leader of the other faction, the Turlocks, is kind of getting along. They're all talking, Picard and Basha and the Turlock leader, and they share a cup of Earl Grey tea that they prepared, especially since they knew Picard liked it. As soon as they drink the tea, the Torlik leader falls dead. Assassinations. It happens all the time in this world. So, they really didn't want peace. Somebody is still wanting to continue this war, of course. But since Picard was right there and kind of basically gave him the cup almost, Picard is arrested, And because of this very backwards world they're on, in 3 days he's going to be executed. So not really any trials or anything like that going on here. But Worf luckily does have 3 days to find the real killer and to get Picard saved. So that kind of kicks off the big mystery chase. So Worf and Troi now have to gather evidence, find clues. You've got Detective Worf on the case here, okay? Now the B story, they just dip into just a little bit, which I love about this. Maybe 3 chapters in total. The Enterprise arrives at the distressed vessel, which is a Milgian vessel, and called the Tsar, and the captain is Captain Derek of the Tsar. And the Milgian are a strange people. They're kind of like almost look like a patchwork of skin kind of put together, and kind of globulous, and they described as moving very strangely as well, almost as if like they're not moving but more like kind of melting around. So they have this vessel, and they're trying to. They call the Enterprise for help because they want to get their civilians and stuff off of it. The rest of the crew is going to go down with the ship. That's kind of like their tradition. They basically have given up hope, and they say, well, our vessel's going to blow up, and there's nothing we can do. Geordi's like, well, maybe I can fix it. And they're like, no, you can't fix it. It's going to blow up. So they're having, it's a culture breakdown, and he's having trouble kind of talk to him to figure out exactly how these engines work, so maybe they can do something to fix it. So, and like I said, they just dip very little into that. So they kind of, that's the first chapter of the B story. They get there, and that's that. Now, they go right back, of course, to Sheriff Worf here, and they need to do some questioning. So they go around questioning, they do first question one of the doctors, and at that questioning, they find out something very distressing about the society, which is that he was basically expecting to be tortured. Worf was appalled. Of course, Troi was appalled. They were just going to talk, but this guy was like shaking in his boots, thinking that Worf was just going to beat him up to get the information out of him, even though he didn't actually know anything in the first place. So that kind of distresses them, and then Colonel Tulane even kind of, she reinforces that and is like, well, yeah, that's how we do things here. That's part of our culture. How are you going to get the information if you don't torture them? So they go and they talk to another Orion, and this is the sentinel of the dead leader, who is supposed to be the guard. So again, and they speak with him, and everyone's like, well, yeah, you can go ahead and beat him. He's going to be expecting you to go ahead and beat him. At this point, Worf realizes, hey, is this how you treat all your prisoners? And she's like, well, yeah, that's how we do things normally. Whoa, what about Picard? So he kind of gets into full freak-out mode, and he's like, all right, we need to check on the captain. They're like, well, the rule is you can't talk to anyone who's in jail and is going to be executed. And they say, well, no, we're going to break the rules. So basically, he kind of forces himself in there, forces himself into the prison. Not in the most peaceful way, but he gets the job done. To find that Picard, thankfully, has not been tortured. Yet. He's actually scheduled to be tortured in just an hour. And Worf is like, I can't let this happen, man. So he wants to get him out of there. He's trying to get him to break out. Picard says, no, there's no way. I'm going to stay in here. You need to do this the right way, and I will just deal with this. So, luckily they don't go into too much of that, because that wouldn't have been a fun read. But man, what a society. Jeez. So, I've left out that between these two factions here, there's a third faction called the Greens. And it's pretty simple to kind of, what they're about is they want to save their planet. So Worf realizes they need to question these Greens as well, since they're going to know something. So they are led to a group of these Greens who really kind of lay out exactly what's been going on here. And what it turns out is this race of people is a very, very powerful, very, very powerful mind powers. And in past times, they were able to use that kind of in conjunction with their planet to heal their planet and heal others, heal themselves. But now, since they've wrecked their planet, they've lost that ability. It's been cut off from them. But even though it's unknown to them, they can still kind of do it unintentionally, which is what they've been doing to Counselor Troi so much. Now, they realize that they've questioned pretty much all of the Greens and everybody that could be involved, and they've kind of got it down to, well, we got to talk to just these couple more people. And they're the ones that are locked up in the jail there. They were also arrested as co-conspirators there, these couple of other Greens. So they got to get back to the jail as quick as they can. Again, basically going in a full run, knowing that as soon as they get close to it, Troy's senses kind of start going off, knowing that Picard's torture has started. So they're into the final minutes here, and this is pretty exciting time in the book, I thought, where he's rushing in there to stop the torture, and this is kind of where Worf finally actually does get to bust out a little bit of his what he's probably wanting to do this whole time, and throw some of these people around. So they do get into the prison in time, they get into the torture room in time. Picard is in the process of being tortured, they're able to stop that from happening. Luckily, Tulane has kind of come to their side at this point, and it's revealed at the end that Basha, the leader who called them there in the first place, was the one who killed his rival, and all just for war. He just wanted to win. That was it. But he did it. He framed Picard and the Greens, and so he gets led away. Picard gets free. The Greens get free, and they finally have a chance for real peace on Oriana. So working together with these Greens, and the Greens, even though most of the planet is wrecked, they have been able to bring back certain little pockets of it back to life, which is great. So they've been working and getting things done. So it's given the other factions a little bit of hope for the future, and that's how the book ends, kind of on a high note of peace is possible. There is going to be some hope for the future here, and really, really, really good. I left out a lot, as I usually do when I'm just randomly going through my head. Oh yes, how did the Milligan situation turn? Milgians. So the B story. They get there. Geordi is trying to, or Geordi and Dr. Crusher are the kind of the B story main team there. They are there on the ship trying to learn how to communicate with the engines. They finally get someone to kind of teach them how to do it, and Geordi has to reach out and he touches the engine and it kind of gets so hot that it actually burns his hand. But through that kind of sampling of genetic material, he's now able to operate the control panels and speak with the engines, and with Dr. Crusher's help is able to determine what happened. And it's at that point when the engineer of this ship kind of gets a little antsy and says, hey, no, get away from there, you guys are about to have a bad accident. And he tries to do something, I think probably to kill them, but the engine won't even let him interact with it. Turns out this guy was a traitor, and he did something to this engine so that they could call the Enterprise away. So, you see the B story ties back into the A story there in the end. So, but yeah, this guy was working with Basha, it turns out, to call the Enterprise away, distract them, in exchange for genetic help on their own planet, which is in a similar state to Oriana. So, the engineer gets hauled away, the ship that's in trouble gets fixed by Dr. Crusher and Geordi, and they're able to beam back and go back and pick up the away team. So the B story wraps up nicely, no issues there at all. Some very interesting, I guess, things to think about just in that little short story there was this race, these Milgians, and their ship, which was technological and biological. And it had pieces and parts of the genetics of the whole crew in the ship itself. So that was an interesting thing to think of, and kind of just a cool little side B story to toss into this book that I thought. But the real, of course, I guess, thoughts and theme of this book is, the horrors, the devastation of war, what it can do, especially if it drags on for that period of time, and what happens when you don't take care of your own planet. Now you can see that these people did everything wrong, completely wrong, and paid for it in the worst possible way, through their children, through their planet, and just through 200 years of war and chaos. So, wow. Again, this was a good book. I have been truly lucky to get 2 very nice Worf books in a row. So that has been very fun. I've enjoyed both of these immensely. But Nightshade was excellent. Like I said, the only book by Laurell K Hamilton, the only Star Trek book, but she knocked it out of the park. I did read a little bit about her, how she came to write this book, and what it was basically was another writer had said that they couldn't make a deadline. She was given the opportunity to do it, had to do it in a short period of time. She was a fan of, I guess, the original series, and obviously knew these characters as well, so I felt that she did a very good job of characterizing Worf and Troi in this. But I thought it was interesting, though, that she wrote such a good book on apparently a very tight deadline as well. So great job to Laurell K Hamilton there. Wow, that is the end of this one. Where are we going to go from here? That's 24. And I can't stop before I get to 25. So up next, we've got Grounded, the new novel by David Bischoff, which we will dig into sometime here tonight, hopefully. And it looks like we're going to be getting maybe a Data Picard-centric story. We'll see. So as always, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Live long and prosper, and we're going to see you in the next one. Bye.